It is time. It is time for the third and final gender binge show of the winter 2023 anime season. We have covered Onimai, which is fantastic. We have covered Ayakashi Triangle, which is delayed. It's okay. And now we have Reborn to Master the Blade, from Hero King to Extraordinary Squire. Again, a series that is airing in the winter 2023 anime season. This is my thoughts on the first three episodes. It's okay. It's actually okay. I typically don't like these reincarnate shows. They typically never turn out to be anything interesting. Typically the characters are a little bit overpowered, and that's definitely the case with this one, but I will have to admit, there's a lot of interesting elements they're creating with this world. I mean, it has a baby that shoots a laser beam to kill a dragon. A baby laser beams a dragon. Very interesting. Reborn, the Master of the Blade opens up with a king that is on his deathbed. He's lived a long, very fulfilling life in the idea that he created a kingdom through the blessings of a divine goddess, which is Alistia. And this king, King Ignis, in his deathbed is confronted by this goddess once again. She thanks him for all the hard work he's done. In his lifespan, he created this kingdom, he created peace within the kingdom itself, and she wishes to grant him one wish. And being that King Ignis pretty much spent his entire life building this kingdom, he never got to do the one thing that he always wanted to do, which was to master the blade. And so he asked the goddess, well, I would like to be reborn so I can actually do what I want, seek out martial arts. And so the goddess agrees. Yes, I'll do that for you. And she does it. And he's reborn into the body of an infant, a girl, which immediately surprises him. Because yes, the mind of his old king self transferred with him into the body of this new infant that's born in this world. Over time, as he's an infant, he realized very quickly that this world itself has kind of given up on magic. Yes, that trope. They do that trope. Every single one of these reincarnates, it's always like the world itself forgets about magic. But no, he does discover eventually that people utilize these things called runes, which is kind of like a marking on their hands. And his cousin, Raphael, is one that carries this very special rune. Well, as he gets a little bit older, eventually this one group comes by and challenges every one of their knights to duels, and this guy pretty much beats everybody. But he very quickly realized that this person is beating everybody because he's using magic. A thing that he thought in this world was gone. He's using magic to basically slow people down, and nobody understands magic, so they don't know what's actually happening, except for Ignis. Well, yes, him as his very young self goes up there and challenges him to a duel, beats him, and that'll come back in later. We'll jump forward, and it's time for Ignis to get his rune. There's this baptism process where people go to this church, they put their hand inside this box, and it will assign them a rune. But he understands why this isn't happening, because again, he knows how to use his aura. He doesn't need a rune to channel mana. And again, he wants technically a slow life. He doesn't want to be special and maybe be assigned to do things. Instead, he decides that he's going to become a squire to his cousin, Lonnie. And thankfully, Lonnie got a greater rune. Not a special rune, but a greater rune. So she's able to work alongside her. And over time, you see Ignis joining alongside Lonnie, and constantly, Ignis badly wants to fight strong things. In this world, there is this rainbow rain that doesn't harm people, but it turns beasts into magicite beasts. And those magicite beasts will attack people, and these soldiers have to take them out. So he's constantly looking for something that's super powerful. There's even like a greater version of it that he desperately wants to fight. A prismer. Eventually, over time, Ignis is starting to realize that this world itself is very different. He assumed that it was the same world that he was once in before, the kingdom that he built up, full of magic and mana. But now again, people use runes to channel mana to artifacts. And additionally, the runes themselves in the baptismal process is actually bestowed upon the people of the world that are on the surface by those that they call the Highlanders, which are people that live on this floating island. And Ignis acknowledges these Highlanders did not exist in the previous world. And it's almost as if the people of the land, their survivability is all predicated on the Highlanders giving them these artifacts. Whether they live or die is based on their whims. So there's obviously some sort of power hierarchy here. And then it leads us to one day when the Highlanders themselves decide to visit the kingdom that Ignis is in. And yes, Ignis goes to this party. Well, it just so happens that one of the Highlanders that comes and visits is somebody that Ignis defeated when he was younger. And this person does not like Ignis. And we really quickly get a sense that pretty much the people of the land would be willing to lick the boots of the Highlanders. This person was trying to force this girl to come to his bedchambers, and somebody stood up to him, and he basically nuked him with magic. And everybody stood by and did nothing, because again, If they fought against the Highlanders, they would lose their ability to fight against the Magicite monsters. But yes, Ignis, because he wants to fight things so badly, was like, all right, let's do it. And this is pretty much where the story just starts to spiral out of control. We get the introduction of another faction that basically wants to take down the Highlanders. Ignis just wants to fight anything that's super strong. You have the side that just wants to retain the order that's currently existing, that the fighting between the Highlanders and the people on the ground doesn't happen. Yeah. So my thoughts on Reborn to Master the Blade. This show so far is okay. Now, I do give this show credit in the idea that I typically don't really get much interest in series that have a reborn type of story, where somebody meets the end of their life or the end of their power, and then they decide to be reborn into the same world, and then they have to basically rebuild themselves up from the ground up. The main characters are typically overpowered, there's nothing that really phases them, and additionally, it's just them just seeking to fight. And yes, that's kind of what we get here. Every now and then having some sort of small joke or comment about the fact that he's now a female. It really does beg the question of what was the purpose of having him be a king in the previous life and this now, other than the idea of kind of every now and then noting how things have changed or that he's not in his previous life. He's already established through looking through books that his kingdom is not in the history books. So there's a good indication here that either this has been a long time jump or he's not in the world that he was before. But like I said, I think the nice thing about this series so far is that it at least has twisted the mechanics within it. And the fact that he has this old power is technically what makes him overpowered, but at least there's sort of an interesting element being added to this world in the idea of the runes themselves, the channeling of mana, and the artifacts. You even have some people that are able to turn into artifacts that people with special runes can actually wield. And with the aspect of the Highlanders themselves bestowing that power upon the people of the land, again, there's at least an interesting world building happening here, and the mechanics within the world itself are kind of slowly evolving. But that's sort of where it kind of sits. I think the biggest problem this show has so far is that it's got way too many mechanics, people, factions, and whatnot for such a condensed story. Within 3 episodes, we've established that he's reincarnated, we've established the new mechanics in the world itself, we've established like 3 or 4 different factions, the monsters, the fact that he's changed into a girl, his seeking battles. There's way too much stuff that's being introduced that it's almost as if it lacks focus. Nothing around Ignis, or Chris as they call him, nothing around Chris seems to matter. He doesn't care about anything. It's always about fighting, which honestly is the worst part of the show. Like, Chris himself is the worst part of the show. He's so dead set focused on one thing that he doesn't even think about anything else. He briefly talks about the fact the world itself has changed, that he can't find his old kingdom, but he doesn't care about that stuff. All he cares about is focusing on not having attention and fighting as strong as possible things. But again, that's not to take away from the fact that, yes, a lot of the side stuff is sort of interesting. This writer has at least created a decently interesting world and mechanics. Animation-wise, I'm very mixed. It's got a very unique art style to it that kind of pops in certain ways, but in other ways doesn't look right. And at least when it comes to monsters, it seems like they put a lot of effort. Like the first episode with the dragon, holy crap, they did a really good job of animating that dragon. But then there's a lot of other scenes where it doesn't feel like they want to put any effort into the action at all. I think my biggest struggle is I don't understand what was the purpose of the writer making Ignis turn into a girl. They haven't really done anything with it. Why not have made the previous life be a queen that turned into a girl? Why a king turning into a girl? They've only really done 2 things with it. One, he makes a comment about how his body is filling out nicely. And then this other moment when he's at a party, he makes this comment about everybody looking at him with lustful eyes, and he goes, man, I used to do that in my previous life, now I feel bad for all those women. But 1, it doesn't make sense because he's literally lived a full 14-year-old life in this body. He should be used to it by then. 2, why did he wear the stupidest looking frilly tutu outfit possible? He should know that that would probably get eyes looking at him. I was kind of curious as if they were going to make comments about the idea that now he's born into a girl's body, he's going to possibly not be able to be a warrior, but this world seems to accept female knights left and right. There's equality in this world. There's no issue with him being a female. It's made no comments on the idea that his muscle mass might be less. There's really no purpose to him having been a male turning into a female, other than, I guess, possibly making it to where he can be Yuri with Lonnie, his cousin, I guess. With all that said, like I said before, it's a decent show so far. It's not terrible. The main character being as OP as they are kind of makes most of the fights kind of boring. They did kind of use it to make a couple of decent laughs in the idea of like one time he shows how overpowered he is to this Edis girl, and so she decides to let him be. And he's like, wait, no, actually, I'm a damsel in distress. You got to stop me. It was kind of funny in that regard, but I think it's probably just going to go into the idea that everything that Inglis fights is terrible, and so you root for him to be overpowered to destroy terrible things. Technically, the 3 things he's fought so far is the dragon, which was going to harm people, so yay, you know, infant laser beam is good. He had 2 fights with Raoul, which he's a dirtbag, so yay for him being overpowered. And I guess, yes, technically he did fight Edis, which was just comedy. But we'll see where it goes from here. That's my thoughts on Reborn to Master the Blade. I hope you guys enjoy this video. As always, if you did, make sure that like button down below. Comment. Let me know what you think of the series so far. Are you enjoying it? Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button so you get all my content. I do news reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, we have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks button down below, as well as a membership button. Greatly appreciate everybody it does. And y'all take care.